Okay, I think I can get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Joining this Cracking the Business Analytics job search. Hopefully, by the end of this, I'm able to answer all of your questions. But if not, there's going to be some time at the end as well to touch on additional questions that you have. But I can get started. Give me 1 second. Okay. I want to start off by declaring that I do have imposter syndrome. I'm not sure how many of you know what imposter syndrome is, but at the crux of it is basically that you don't really believe in your abilities to actually get the job done, and that stops you, especially in a job market, to not just apply to a job, but once you actually get the job, on if you're good enough for the job, if you deserve to be here. And I think I'm not alone in this. I've seen a lot of people have imposter syndrome in a job setting. So if anyone does share it, please know you're not alone. Everybody has imposter syndrome in some form or the other. But this is my declaration that I want to start off with. So now, imposter syndrome basically makes me question every time I've gotten a job, how I have got this job, how exactly am I here? This is the question I have asked myself at the end of every single job offer I've got is how the hell did I get this job? I'm pretty much like this girl in the meme who is extremely confused about it. But just because you have these reservations doesn't mean you should not be applying for a job. So I want to get started off with, firstly, it's okay to say I don't know in an interview. I think there are going to be questions in every single interview that you will not know the answers to. It's a very good possibility. You don't need to know everything before you go into an interview. And there have been times in my own interview processes that I have not known every single answer to every single question. Especially like one of the interviews I did with IHME. This is an organization on campus. It's a research institute on campus. That entire position required me to know Python and machine learning. I didn't know either of those two things before I applied to this job. To be fair, now I'm also questioning what made me apply to this job in the first place. But I made sure to tell them that, hey, even though I didn't know Python, even though I didn't know ML, I had Java experience in the past. So I had transferable skills that I could actually apply to the specific setting and in these specific situations, which would allow me to still do the job. And I could also pick it up on the job as well and learn a lot while I'm on the job, talk to my peers, talk to people who do have experience in this field, and also Google a lot on what machine learning models to use, I learned anything and everything I could potentially learn about the models I was using. I learned about Python syntaxes, I learned about data structures. I think a combination of all of those two things did help me, even though I didn't know it at the time of the interview. I was very upfront that I said I don't know it in an interview, but I also supplemented that answer by saying that I have the skill set necessary to learn this, and I had the time to learn it, even if I didn't know it at the time. So in spite of having imposter syndrome, in spite of going interview saying you don't know something, don't be nervous or don't be scared to say the words I don't know. I think it's okay to say it, but also make sure you supplement it by what are you bringing to the table, even if you don't know it at the time. And also sometimes you can also go back to an interviewer after the conversation and email them saying, hey, I didn't know it at the time, but I Googled it afterwards. I've learned a lot about it and definitely understand it better now. So please make sure that don't get nervous or don't get anxious that you don't know anything in an interview. I would say go for it regardless. It's okay that you don't know everything. The next is it's okay also to try different jobs before you find the right one. I know sometimes like you're nervous that you don't feel like you're the right fit for a job, or you feel like your path is not as traditional as what other people have done in the past. The reason why this background is what it is because even though right now I'm a business analyst, I did like a whole host of jobs before I got here. Like I was a financial analyst. I was a data engineering intern. I was a data scientist intern. I did consulting. I was a project manager. I did a lot of different jobs. And I think all of those jobs didn't go to waste because I found a way to tie back each of the experiences that I learned, even to my Amazon interviews. And I think you get to have this breadth of knowledge and explore all of these different fields and actually can leverage a lot of these experiences in your interviews, either behavioral interviews where you're, speaking to your leadership skills that you learned or picked up from these jobs, or, technical skills. For example, like when I was at Sphere Education, I was a data engineering intern for them. And I still use some aspects of that job for my business analyst job today. So it's crazy that even though I think it's useful to have a breadth of knowledge, because you never know when it might be useful. And it's also good to explore these different fields before you find the right fit for yourself, because eventually I think it's all about how you get to where you get. And if you try different things, at least what to eliminate, or you pick up things that are really transferable to other aspects of your different jobs. So I would say it's fine, even if you don't think that, you feel like your current job is not what you want to do. It's okay. You can always leverage it in an interview for it as an experience, or you can always take those skill sets and those experiences to your next job. So don't be nervous or don't overthink that, hey, I'm not where I'm supposed to be. Because whenever I got all of these jobs, I didn't have a clear cut path on where I was going to go. But these were the building blocks that led me to get my current position, which I didn't know at the time. So it's okay to try out multiple different jobs as you go along your job search. And it's definitely okay to not meet every requirement on a job posting. If you take away anything from this entire talk, please take that away. Because like I said, every single job I've applied for, I was not suited for every single bullet point that was on that job posting. For example, I did a data science internship with Amazon when I was doing my master's. I did not know time series modeling at the time. I knew very basics of it, but I did not know enough to be able to, do this job very, very well. And that was okay. Like, I did not meet that job requirement, but I still applied because I knew that for the interview, there are two aspects of it going into it. You need to know a certain amount for the interview, and you need to know, and there are certain things you will only pick up once you actually start your job. So go through your job posting, go through certain things that you don't know in your job requirements. If you have the time, I would say take that time to explore, like learn those skill sets that you don't think you meet those job requirements for. Have the basic knowledge of it so that you can answer some of the questions. Or like I said, go back to I don't know, but I can supplement it through learning. And when you're on the job, make sure you spend the time that is needed, that you need to spend to learn it. Because ultimately it's on a job posting because you will require it. But make sure you talk to peers, talk to your coworkers, talk to experts in the field, Google a lot, learn through online courses, so that you're able to supplement that, like bridge that gap between not knowing to actually knowing and finishing the job that you were actually hired to do. So it's genuinely okay, even if you don't meet every requirement, but don't let that stop you from applying. But make sure you're also trying actively to learn those things that are not on your resume, because ultimately all this is it's telling you is, hey, okay, we have this gap in our skill set. Let's try working on, closing that gap, instead of, hey, I just don't know it, I shouldn't apply in the first place. I don't think that's the story you want to leave. I think using that as an opportunity to guide your learning is a much better route to take than just not applying in the first place. So ultimately, this spiel is to say that always apply, irrespective of you feel like you're not fit for the job, even if you feel like you won't know all the answers to the questions, even if you feel like you're not meeting every requirement, make sure to always apply, because you never know, like even the interviewers understand that you will not know every single thing that is on that job posting, but you have enough of a skill set to be able to get started and to be able to contribute to any job that you're applying to. So because you just don't know. So always go ahead and apply, even if you're anxious, even if your imposter syndrome is telling you you don't belong here, you have no business applying for this job, go ahead and always apply. So what next? So my imposter syndrome had hindered me to apply, and now let's say you've convinced yourself to actually apply to this job and have submitted, have started creating your resume to be able to submit to this application. Now, over the course of the last couple of years that I've tried to job search, I've noticed I did make a lot of mistakes on my resume, and I have also fixed a lot of these mistakes in the last couple of years. And here are all the mistakes I actually did make. So mistake one was not including non-tech jobs in a tech resume. This is especially true when I was first starting out. So I didn't have a lot of tech experience when I was starting out in my undergrad. I had maybe one research position and that's about it. And obviously in a resume, you can't just put one tech job and that's about it and leave the rest of your resume blank. So I think that time I just thought, okay, I didn't see the value in putting any non-tech jobs on a tech resume at the time. I thought, it's a tech job. They're only looking for technical skill sets. What would be the point of putting all of these non-tech jobs that I was doing on this resume? And I think that was one of the biggest mistakes I made starting out. And here's why, is because a lot of your jobs that you're trying to do, especially if it's a business analyst job, is not just tech. So a lot of my job today is not just coding. It's not just building out, visualizations. It's not just that. A lot of it is understanding the business, understanding what goes behind, creating a business, what it takes to actually grow a business, networking with stakeholders, managing expectations of your stakeholders, making sure your project is running smoothly. So project management is important. There are a lot of skills outside of just coding that are very, very important to being a business analyst that can very easily come out through these non-tech jobs. So for example, like I was a consultant and a project manager for one of these organizations on campus called the Business Impact Group. That was not a tech job. That was by no means a tech job. If anybody had seen it on my resume, I was always asked, like, why are you putting consulting and project management experience on a tech resume and only putting like one tech job on this resume? The reason it really, really helped was because these people were looking for, I had one of my interviewers say, hey, we really like that you had project management experience because we don't have a big team. So you will tend to drive a lot of the projects on your own. And having this project management experience will help you, guide what that project is supposed to look like, guide talking to stakeholders, managing stakeholder expectations. These are some things you truly learn in non-tech jobs and not always on a tech job. So having that on my resume was basically the reason I even got that job, because they needed those skill sets that were very easily highlighted in those non-tech jobs and not so much on my tech jobs that were focused more on like the coding projects that I was doing. So mistake one was not including non-tech jobs, but I fixed it. Once I fixed it, I added it into my work experience. I had a product management and a consultant experience on one of my resumes, as you can see, which really did help because I think it highlighted a lot of the soft skills that I was trying to get noticed for any of these business analytics or analytics jobs. It's not just for analytics jobs. I think it's important to have it on any job. These are skill sets that will help you just generally in the job market as well. So having them capacity, I think it's always a plus point. Okay. Mistake two that I made on my resume was not quantifying any of my contributions. So what I mean by this is any job that you're doing, it always has, like there's a reason that you're doing this job, and all of these jobs can be quantified in what your contributions can always be quantified. Be it like how many manpowers you saved, how much efficiency you increase, or if the model, how much you increase your accuracy of the model. You can very easily quantify a lot of these. And that's what I've noticed as like that's what catches people's attention on a resume. So I had not done that in the past. Like I was just saying very vague statements on my resume, which didn't really showcase that I even had any sort of impact on the job. For example, in one of my old resumes, I had written, okay, I built a data visualization with Tableau. I thought at the time it was such a great thing to put on my resume because it showcased, hey, I've used Tableau. That should be good enough. And that should showcase that I have a Tableau experience in the past. I can do visualizations in Tableau, and that is it. But that's not enough because everybody can have a Tableau, like anybody can do Tableau. It's not something that's going to make you stand out. It's not something that explains what your job was. It doesn't even explain like how you contributed to a company. It's a very, very vague statement to put on a resume, but you can change that. And this is what I should have written. And I did change it in this sort of format in the future. Was I changed that to saying I built out reports and an automated QA dashboard in Tableau that saved 100 hours of manual internal auditing. So that was a very big difference from just building out a data visualization in Tableau versus a very quantified example of what exactly did you do. So this doesn't tell me what I did. This just says, hey, I built out a Tableau visualization and that's about it. But this one tells you a little bit more targeted that, okay, what did my visualization do? It was an automated QA dashboard. It had been internal auditing. Okay, how did it benefit the customer? It benefited the customer by saving 100 hours of manual labor. So a person who's reading this statement now knows that, hey, you built out a dashboard. It was actually utilized by the company. It was not just, some sort of a side project that wasn't ever utilized. This project was actually used in the company. They used it for internal auditing. It was, some process that was manual. Now you automated it, and now it has saved 100 hours of your company's time. This is your actual contribution to your company. Like, this is a much more strong statement than just saying that you built a visualization with Tableau. So quantifying your results in any sort of way, I think, is always beneficial. It's also great to know yourself that, hey, this is my project. This is how it actually benefited your customer. This is how it actually improved your company. And that's some things you can always also, mention in your interviews as to how you help the company. Because at least in Amazon, that's a big thing, is how did you help your customer? And these sort of quantifiable metrics for most tech companies are always a plus point, because it's always something that they're looking for is how can you quantify your contributions? And that should be apparent even in your resume and not just in your interviews, using kind of these sort of statements where you're more action oriented and more numbers oriented rather than just vague statements. Okay. Mistake number 3 I made when I was making my resumes was not having a skill section. So I think this was really important, and this was a suggestion that one of my grad school advisors had actually given me, is to have like a separate skills section. What happens is, especially in like a career fair or like a one-on-one quick conversation, or even if you're just sending your resume out to your recruiters, they don't have the time to sit and comb through your entire resume. I know there are like softwares to do it, but if just a person is looking at it, it's very hard for them to pick up just keywords from off of your resume or based on like paragraphs of information that's written in there. No matter how clean your resume is, it's always a little bit hard to pick up those points very, very quickly, especially for a tech job. So what I did is I created a skills section in there, which you can automatically see right off the bat what technical skill sets I have and what is my competency in those skill sets. I think this is really useful, because if you have, even if you have worked on like, let's say like R, Tableau, Python, Java, MATLAB, but not all of those things are in your projects and your experience section of it, at least you have it covered there, even if you don't have specific examples of it in your actual resume, so that they know that, hey, even though, all of the stuff that I have listed on my resume doesn't actually include this, I still have this competency and I still have the skill set. So that's just an additional piece of information that you can add without taking up too much space in your resume, which is always, I think that was really helpful, because I was able to tell them, hey, even though, my R projects are not, let's say, for example, my R projects are not very easily listed on my resume, I still have that as an additional skill. Or for example, like I did, let's say I know how to do like app development or something, but it's not written in any of the job experiences that I have written out, listed out at the bottom. I can still add it at the top to say, hey, I have this experience. And these are additional skill sets that I have outside of the ones that, you need for this job role. So it's a very quick way to get a person's attention as well, and convince them that, hey, this is a resume worth looking at. And I think it's really useful in that way. So how did I rectify it? So this is a resume I ultimately sent to Amazon. This one has, like I said, the skills section is here. Right off the bat, I put all my skill sets here. So in case anybody was looking at it, they knew that, hey, this person knows R, SQL, Excel, Tableau Prep, anything that I think was in the job posting, that I specifically searched the job posting for the skill sets I needed. I made sure if I had them, I put it in here. Like I put it right off the bat here so that they knew that I had these skill sets. They didn't have to like comb through my resume to look at it. They could see exactly what I had right off the bat. Another thing I did was I was an intern with Amazon in the past, so I made sure to include that in as well. So they know that I was already familiar with the company. I already, had worked with them before. I had already done Tableau related projects with them before. So again, another plus point, you can just include it here. So these are like a couple of things. Like I made sure to quantify my experience in the internships that I was doing. I made sure to add like numbers here. And I made sure it was very visible so that people didn't have to comb through an entire resume to see it. And it was extremely apparent to them that, these are my contributions to the company. These are the skill sets that I bring to the table. And it was very easy to tie my resume to the job posting. It was almost like this is how I tailored my resume to the job posting by doing like the skill section or like making these things a little bit more apparent. So I think this is a very useful way to get someone's attention in your resumes. And also personal projects are a great way to do it as well if you don't have a lot of experience. Okay, so this resume ultimately is what got me my interview, at least at Amazon. Now, once your resume is out, you did all of the work to fix it. You have made sure it's extremely, clear that it's tailor-made to your job posting. Now what next? Now you got the interview. So how do I actually prepare for this interview? And how did I prepare for this interview specifically? So most Amazon interviews especially have like two sections. You have a technical section and you have a behavioral section. And these will alternate back and forth. Like it's not just that your one interview specifically is all behavioral and your next interview is all technical. You can go back and forth with your technical and behavioral questions. So in terms of technical questions, at least, my go-to resource was the LeetCode databases questions. I extensively did like all of the medium and hard questions on LeetCode. I think why I say specifically medium and hard is because I think the SQL questions on LeetCode are a little bit too easy. So I think medium and hard give you like a good range of questions that have a much more likelihood of showing up in an interview rather than just an easy question. But if you are not familiar with SQL at all in the past and you're just getting started, I would say, start with the easy questions, understand SQL, understand the syntaxes, understand, what joins are, understand what, select statements are, what where clauses to use, when to use them, what's a group by, understand the basics with those easy questions. But for an interview, expect the medium and hard questions. Like that usually should give you a good question bank on what to expect, especially when it comes to Amazon, at least. I essentially did as many SQL questions as I could. And another thing I want to mention here is don't just do the questions once and understand. If you don't get it, see a solution and then just leave it. Make sure like the questions that you're not getting, understand why, what part of the problem didn't you not understand? Understand the solution really well. Like in case you missed like a group by that you were supposed to add, but you didn't add it. Understand why it's there so that you can always need to go back to this question, understand it, and you can apply it to the next question. Don't just leave it, forget about it, and never come back to it again. That's not how you will learn these SQL questions. I think it's not just for SQL. I would say this is also for Python, for anybody who is going to do Python related questions as well. Make sure you're understanding your solution and always go back and retry those questions again with the knowledge you have learned and see if you're able to crack it the next time. Don't just, run through 100 questions and never come back to any of these questions before, because I have made this mistake before. I have done like 100 questions and I never remembered like the first couple of questions and the first couple of mistakes I did. I never went back to it, never understood what kind of mistakes I was making. And if I had just done that, I would see I was repeatedly making like very similar mistakes, which I could have rectified in the first go itself had I actually looked at the kind of mistakes that I was making. So always go back, always relook at your questions, always, practice on new questions, but go back and review all of the questions you've done in the past and review why you got the questions wrong if you did get them wrong. And specifically about SQL questions, I would say expect window functions, CTE queries, and joins. I don't know how many of you are aware of what like window functions, CTE queries are, and joins are as well, but I can walk through it very quickly. So window functions are those like dense rank and rank questions. I think a lot of, if you understand exactly how to use dense rank and rank, I think you're going to be able to solve a lot of the SQL questions that are asked. Understand the difference between rank and dense rank, understand, what they're supposed to be doing, I think even for your job, it's really important. Like I've used these functions in my actual job as well. I think they're really useful. So understand, what their functions are, have examples on how to use them, and make sure you practice questions which are actively trying to use them, because it's going to come up in a lot of interview questions, not just for Amazon. I think it's going to come across like for multiple other like any SQL question for other companies. I think window functions are pretty useful. CTE queries just allow you to write like temp tables almost inside a query. It's almost like a supplementation of a subquery. Again, something I've actively used in my job even now as a business analyst, and in the past, every time I've used SQL, I've seen the importance of window functions and CTE queries. So understand these two really well. And joins, definitely understand joins, because even like most of your even basic and easy queries, joins are important. So make sure you understand what a join is doing. Make sure to understand like, how do you use these joins, how these two tables are connected. I think these three things, if you focus on your SQL questions, you should be able to answer a lot of your interview questions. And also it'll really help in your job itself, because most of your queries are going, if it's a complex query, more times than often, you will have window functions, CT queries, and joins in them. So it's better to understand them really, really well. Okay. So for behavioral, so now you've gone through your technical questions. You will have a lot of technical questions. And in my interviews, I had maybe like half of my rounds were technical and half were behavioral. So once you have gone through, your technical prep, you've gone through your SQL prep, you've gone through, going through these joins, I would say don't wing your behavioral interviews. Please don't wing your behavioral interviews. Because I've seen a lot of people say, hey, I'm a good, conversationalist. I can, I'll make up answers on the spot. It's totally fine. As long as I know the values that a company has, I'm going to be okay cracking behavioral interviews. Please don't do that. Please prepare for your behavioral interviews. If you're good at, talking to people, that's great. But you need to learn how to tailor your conversation to the company or to the people in the company that you're talking to. And there are ways you can, study to do this. And I can run through all of my behavioral interview prep. I think when I went to my Amazon interview, I think I did more prep for my behavioral interviews than I did for my coding rounds, because I think I had done enough coding in the past to be able to crack my coding rounds, but I did not realize how much I had to study for my behavioral interviews. So let me just show you my behavioral interview prep. It's insane. I'm pretty proud of it, but I think it was also required. Okay. This is just a document that I had started writing for when I was trying to interview prep for Amazon. So I can walk you guys through how I structured this and how I approached it. So what I did was, firstly, for Amazon, make sure you know the leadership principles. Make sure you understand each leadership principles. Even if you think they're not applicable to you, make sure you know them really, really well, and all of them. There are, I think, 14 or 16 of them. Learn all of them, understand all of them. You don't necessarily have to remember it, but just know you understand what each of these leadership principles are saying. So what I did was I basically I first went to Glassdoor. I went through, multiple online resources to find any and all questions that Amazon could possibly ask. And by that, I mean, I literally made like a long question bank on what questions could potentially come from. Like I said, it's extremely long. And I also looked for specific to leadership principles as well. I got any and every question I could possibly find online. I ended up consolidating all of it into a question bank, which is kind of like this. And then I split up each question and some of the questions I found into the leadership principle they could potentially be falling into. For example, I thought that, let's say a time you improved a process, or, time you implemented something in your team that improved the experience of a customer. I felt all of these questions were coming under a customer obsession question. So I just kind of grouped them together. And that's the second step I did, is I started grouping questions based off of leadership principles. I even found articles that were doing it anyway. So that helped me a little bit more to understand what kind of questions are asked when. But this is one of the first documents I want to show you is 16 leadership principles and all the questions that you could possibly ask for each leadership principle. Like I said, so customer obsession, they have very specific questions for each leadership principle here. You can see for ownership, what are the potential questions you could ask? Some of the questions can be applicable to more than one leadership principle. So you might see some repetitions here and there. So I used this document as a starting point and Glassdoor questions to make a question bank and also split up all of my questions based off of leadership principles that I could find. So this is my first document. This is my second document where I started actually splitting up all of my questions. You can see like customer obsession, I had like 5-6 major questions. Ownership, I had some questions. Some leadership principles, which I didn't think would come up. I didn't tend to have a lot of questions in there. But that was the first thing I did. Then this is the second thing is go and learn every leadership principle. Like make sure you understand it, make sure you can, this will help tailor your answers to it. This is the second document. This is basically just telling you what leadership principles are and just explaining it a little bit more in detail. This is coming directly from the Amazon website, so you should be able to find it anywhere online. This will help you tailor your answers a little bit better because you need to understand what you're trying to explain before you try and make up an example for it. So go through these leadership principles online and use wordings from these to tailor your answers. So this is the second document. The third document that really, really helped me was this one. So this is a sheet I think I again found on the Amazon website. What this sheet is it's giving you all of your leadership principles. So it's telling you exactly what they are. This is the same thing like the previous document. But what it does is it forces you to, it's a worksheet. So what it's telling you is, okay, this is the leadership principles. It's forcing you to basically come up with 2 examples per leadership principle and try and explain them. Explain your examples tailor-made to this specific leadership principle. For example, hey, customer obsession is a leadership principle, which says that, we are putting customers at the forefront of whatever we're doing. We want to keep their trust. We want, we don't really obsess about customers, competitors. We want to focus on our customers. So make sure that, okay, so now you know what this customer obsession principle is telling you. You need to have at least 2 examples to justify how are you customer obsessed. What are experiences in the past that you have gone through that are allowing you to showcase this leadership principle. And you should be able to do this depending on the time you have. I, at the time, went through all of these, but if you don't have the time, I would say, I think customer obsession is, I think there are some leadership principles that are more important than others sometimes. And some interviewers tend to focus on those more than others. Like I would say customer obsession is one of those where, like it's a very important leadership principle for Amazon. So right off the bat, if you did want to prioritize what principles to work on, I would say customer obsession, ownership, these are invent and simplify, could be, depending on the team you join, could be important to them. So focus on like those kinds of things, focus on these leadership principles, have examples in your life, in your past experiences that are specifically, tailored to these principles. Use these words if you can. Like I think I used the word customer obsession when I was interviewing for Amazon. Most of my answers were heavily focused on customer obsession because that is truly a principle I related to the most. So I made sure, like, even if it was not a customer obsession question, I made sure to, add those, add that piece in that, hey, I really wanted to help the customer and whatever other leadership principle you want to bring into the table. But make sure it is very well tailored. And that's why you need to know your customer, like you need to know the leadership principles to be able to tailor your answers to them. And I think this worksheet forces you to kind of think through your like examples in your life and really like write it down. I think once you write it down, you should be able to remember them better as well. So this is the third document. This is essentially the fourth document. And I think this was really important. So now what did I do is I have this worksheet, I have the leadership principles, I have, the question bank that I created. Now it's time to actually write down your answers. Like, you really need to be able to practice them. I think I extensively practiced my answers verbally, but for me, it was just really helpful to write it down in the format that I wanted to say it. I didn't always end up saying exactly these words, but after practicing it enough times, I think I had the story down to be able to mold it any way possible. So, for example, like a customer obsession question, this was a couple of questions I felt like were asking kind of the same thing. And I wanted to tailor an example to this specific kind of question. So you have this question, you have the star format, which really helps structure your answer a little bit better so that you're not rambling on and on and on about unimportant parts of your story. Using the star method, let's say the star method, not sure how many of you are familiar with it, but a star method is essentially situation, task, action, result. So I started with situation. So tell me about a time you improved the process. I started by literally writing down what the situation was that helped me showcase my leadership principle. I as much detail as I possibly could put in here, I put in here. It didn't matter if I was saying these things or not. I just wanted to capture as much of it as I possibly can. Then task, I wrote down exactly what I did to tackle, the problem that I had. And I wrote exactly the solutions that I came up with. I made sure, like, as many places that I could use bullet points, at least while I was writing it down, just so that it helped me also understand that, hey, this was the result. This was 1, 2, 3 things I did. This was the task. This is 1, 2, 3. That was the task. This was the situation. This was exactly what the problem was. This is exactly what I did. I think this helps structure your answer really well so that you're not going off in tangents while an interview is going on. You make sure to answer the question that they're actually asking you. And for me, it just really helped going through this example having it written down so I could read it over and over and over again and practice it after that verbally to get it down, so that these are kind of examples where you don't have to just use it for one leadership principle. You can mold it to, be applicable to other leadership principles as well. So that's where this worksheet helps. So once I had this down, I knew what this example was related to. So let's say I had a title for this called, I don't know, implementing XYZ. So I wrote implementing XYZ here. So I knew, like, when I was right before my interview prep, I knew that I didn't have to go through this entire 17-page document. I knew my example. I knew how it related to this leadership principle. I kind of wrote it down here while I was just, my last minute prep. I had it right down here, and that really helped not have, all my examples all over the place. So I knew exactly which example or which past experience of mine was tailored to which leadership principle. And that was essentially what helped me crack my behavioral questions very, very well. I think that really helped. So I don't know how much time you guys will have for your interviews, but if you have time now, these questions are available online. These questions are not going to be only applicable to Amazon. Leadership principle of Amazon tend to be applicable for other companies as well. So I would say, like, for any company that you're applying, if I really found this format very, very helpful to structure my behavioral interview prep. So I would say start now, irrespective of you're applying to Amazon, you're applying to Microsoft, it doesn't matter. These principles tend to be, you'll tend to see elements of this pop up here and there. So even if you're not applying to Amazon, I would say go through them, structure your answers like this, make sure it is tailored to obviously the company that you're applying for, but it's very easy to get started with it now, and make sure you have these examples ready that you think will be very helpful for your behavioral question. And this is where your non-tech experience really comes in handy, because sometimes questions for what is it? I think it is especially when dealing with stakeholders or something like that. I think I tend to see those questions also come up here and there. Your soft skills and your non-tech positions tend to give you opportunities where you have actually applied these more than your tech roles. So I think that's exactly coming back to the same point, is include them on your resumes, even if you think it's not going to be important, because you can very well use it for these kind of interview questions and to showcase some of these leadership principles. So even if it's not meeting a job requirement, you're showcasing that, hey, these are my past experiences that are tailor-made to your values. So even if I'm not, on paper, I don't have the technical skill sets for it, my values are aligning with your company's values, and that's why I'm a great fit. So that's a great addition to your resume if you feel like you don't have a lot of technical experience to include. Okay. Coming back to this. Okay. So these are essentially a lot of the interview prep that I did and everything, both technical and non-technical, that I did to actually prepare for this. I want to touch over some of the audience questions that I think were given out while this this was shared. But here, I can go through a couple of these. These are just a small list, but there's definitely time afterwards to go over any other additional questions that anyone else has. So even if your question's not here, we definitely have time to address those as well. So we can address it after this. So coming to your audience questions, how do you go about this process when the company is a small one and you cannot find these leadership principles for them? It's a really good question, and it makes sense. Firstly, any company should have any sort of values that they abide to. It might not be as extensive as Amazon has it, but you will still have some of the leadership principle on their website. But like I said, Amazon leadership principles tend to be so extensive that you will see elements of them in other company leadership principles as well. So if you're actually working off of a bigger list, and if you can work off of Amazon's list, you should be able to use and tailor, mold these examples to the leadership principles for even a small company that you are working for. So even if you think it's a small company and you can't find leadership principles for them, go for Amazon's leadership principles, Microsoft leadership principles. You will tend to see the same kind of questions come up. So if you can prepare for that, you should very easily be able to answer behavioral questions for smaller companies as well. Can you share all the documents in your presentation? Yes, I will share it at the end of this. After this meeting, I'll go ahead and share it. Give me just 1 second. I think these might have been a little bit messed up. Okay. Great. So let's say you do have, you went through your interview prep, you've got the job offer. That's great. Congratulations. Now it's time to actually negotiate your salaries and, understand what they're asking. I would say if you're going into a negotiation, make sure you understand like what they're offering you and compare it to what you have in the market. I think that is a very good first step to start off with. Don't go in blind in a negotiation, like know A, what you're worth, B, what are you getting offered, and C, like what is the average in the market before you jump into that conversation. Don't go in blind. And please always negotiate. If you can negotiate, always negotiate. Don't feel nervous that, like I said, don't get your imposter syndrome take over here. Don't let it say that, hey, I got this job, that's itself a big deal. I don't even think I deserve this job, let alone the salary. Don't think that. Always negotiate. Even if you think you're like, yeah, just go into a conversation, always negotiate. And there are a lot of aspects of a job offer that you can negotiate. So it's not just your base salary that you can negotiate. A job offer usually tends to be broken down into your base, your signing bonus, and your stocks. So if you go into a conversation, make sure you research all of these 3 areas, like understand what is your base let's say for a business analyst position, understand what is the base salary in the market for your kind of role in your region, understand what the signing bonuses looks like, understand your stock options. There are multiple sites online that you can use to, get that information. Compare it with what you're getting, compare it with your, skill sets, compare it with your educational background, and come up with a number and negotiate all 3 things. Like, at least when I went into my negotiations, if it was not just the base salary. I had like option A, B, C to see, hey, if option A, when I was negotiating my base, they rejected, I had a plan B where I was trying to, get a higher signing bonus. But option C, where I was trying to get more stocks. So it's not just the base that you're negotiating. You can virtually negotiate all three aspects of it, and always try to negotiate. Irrespective you think that you're getting a decent salary or not, I would say negotiate, because usually you would be surprised how many companies would actually agree to actually negotiate it in return. Sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes it's a very standard rate that they offer, and it's just not an option to negotiate it. But if you can, at least ask before you assume. Ask if they're willing to negotiate it, and then always try. I think I can open it up to a lot. Like, before I open it up to questions from like all of you guys, I think let me just go through all of the questions in the Google form, and if there's something that's sorry,
questions and slides for next.
Yeah. So before outside of these questions, if you feel like we haven't covered anything, we can always come back. But let me just go through the other questions that are here. So would you recommend getting a master's in data science or analytics for someone who doesn't have a business or a data analytics background? Honestly, I would say for data science, if you haven't done a lot of your courses in data science in your undergrad, I think it would be useful to get a master's. I think it always adds value to a resume for data science. For data analytics and business analytics specifically, I think if you've had past experiences, or if you can, have like aspects of your resume where you can showcase that you have the skill sets to do this job, I don't think you need a master's. This is my personal opinion. Like, I think it could differ based on the company, based on the job roles and stuff. But personally, for a business analytics or a data analytics job, I don't think you need a master's to do it. Data science, I would still recommend. There are certain things you may not have learned in your undergrad that I think grad school program definitely helps. But again, I've seen people go to data science jobs even out of undergrads. So it really depends on the company. If they're willing to accept people with master, like a data science person without a master's program, sure, go for it. You can always try. But I think it would be useful in a data science. It's not as necessary for a business or a data analytics position as such. What advice would you give to students that are pursuing a major that does not directly relate to business analytics? Honestly, I didn't do my major directly related to business analytics either. My undergrad was in economics. I thought I was going to a whole different track. My master's was in computational finance. I thought I was going to get into quantitative modeling. I didn't do a traditional like an MSIM course or like a data science course. I didn't do those things. I think, like I said, there are always going to be aspects of the stuff that you study that are going to be helpful in these kind of jobs. And also you can always, supplement this with like your own personal projects, your own portfolios, your online learning, your, part-time positions. You can make a very good case that even if you didn't, do it as your undergrad or grad school program, you can still get this job. So I would say don't let it discourage you at all from applying to these kind of positions, because you can very easily make a case for getting this position, even if you have not studied it. I don't think it's necessarily required that just because you study something, you have to go into that. So don't ever let it discourage you. I think if you can get the skill sets required from places, go for it, apply for the position. How is the interview formatted, and what are some of the good resources to prepare for the interview? So for part A of the question, how is the interview formatted? I think for me, at least, I had like a couple of initial rounds of interviews where it was testing my technical skill sets. And then we had those 6 interview rounds where it was both behavioral and technical. So that was just my experience, but it could differ based on the job that you're applying to, based on the team that you're applying to. But no, at least for a business analytics position, more often than not, it will be that you will have some rounds of behavioral where they will tackle like some leadership questions, versus a technical interview where they will tackle like different people will tackle different kinds of questions just to get your skill sets out. So that's how my Amazon interview went, at least. And the resources portion of it I already covered. Like for SQL, for technical questions, I extensively use LeetCode. You can also, I guess, use HackerRank. And if you really want to learn SQL, like go for all of the online courses. I think DubsTech has a great like visualization course. You can even learn visualization there, or the MSIM program. So I think those are good resources to learn the material itself. And for interview prep, you can always, use like build a project of your own, so that you're not just learning it. You're not just building a portfolio to showcase the interview that you've done it, but you're also learning a lot of the things as you are preparing for this interview. So I think those are good technical sources. Behavioral sources I'll share after this. At least these are what I used. Behavioral tends to come down to finding the questions, finding the leadership principles, and then it's all about how you structure your own personal experiences to these leadership principles and to these questions. So that's something I guess you will have to sit and tackle on your own. And after all of this, I would highly recommend mock interviews. Have your peers or your friends or somebody ask you these questions and practice with them. Because I also even recorded myself, even though I hate recordings of myself. I even recorded myself to know exactly what I was saying. Was I using too many filler words? Was I, on track and answering the questions that I was asked? So make sure you practice a lot, not just your technical questions, but also your behavioral questions, because you will be nervous in an interview. You will, mess up sometimes. But if you have, your practice is going to give you almost like a muscle memory that you will remember all of these things in spite of being nervous. At least that's what happened with me. So always practice all of these as well. Okay. How do you get interview callbacks? Should I tailor my resume to each role I apply for? Current openings for BIBA, intern roles for international students. How do you get interview callbacks? Let's tackle that one. At least the best way I have seen, I've tried reaching out to the people, and not just the recruiter. Like I've definitely networked with recruiters, gone to networking events, made sure, I don't think it's good to just ask a recruiter like, hey, here I am. Hi, this is my resume. Please give me a job. I've never seen that work for anybody. I would say try to get to know your recruiters, try to get to know what they're looking for, network with people on LinkedIn. I would say directly reach out to the teams that you're applying for as well. Like, let's say I was like for this interview, let's say you have like a business analytics specific team that you've already applied for. I would make sure I network with people in the team who are my potential co-workers in the future. So they know that you're not telling them, hey, I applied for this job, pass up my resume to the recruiter, nothing like that. But you should know, like, okay, these are the people you're going to work with. How are you guys gelling? What are the kind of problems they're tackling? Understand what they're doing. And you can use that, in fact, in your interviews to just say, hey, I spoke to these guys. This seems to be like a problem area in your company or in your team that you're trying to tackle. Here's how I can help. Here's what I bring to the table. I think those conversations and the insights I got from those conversations helped to even structure my examples for it. Like even my leadership principles and the things I should focus on, I kind of got some clues based off of my interactions with, these people directly on the team. So go to LinkedIn, check check the recruiters and the managers and the, other analysts who are working on the team, directly reach out to them. This will help you get noticed, if not for this job, at least for other jobs, because they will always keep you in mind that when they're trying to even look for other positions. So I would say that really helped, networking with like other analysts, going through like any online, communities that you have, like let's say, for example, DubsTech, or if there's any data science community on your campus, go in these groups, network with them, because more often than not, if it's a known knowledge that, these communities exist, there could be like jobs that they directly sent to them because they know that this is the candidate pool that they're looking for. So you can directly just be part of these communities, be around these people, so that you are part of the conversations when it comes to, you're already part of the candidate pool essentially when they're looking for people. And when it comes to international students, honestly, I think most job postings have, if they are sponsoring or not. Or I would say, if you don't want to waste your time, just ask the recruiter. I've also heard that, do the internship at least if you can, even if they don't sponsor, because it's still experience that counts. But I would just ask the recruiter if they sponsor or not, and then tailor make. I highly do recommend tailor make your resumes to your jobs. And in fact, I would go one step further and say to your companies as well, because if they see, like, for example, customer obsession in your resume, you're already telling them that, hey, I've researched your company. I'm very interested in it. I'm already, I've already done stuff that I've applied your leadership principles. It's your first interaction with the company, right? So you want to put as much of your best, like your best foot forward. So I would say not just tailor make it to your role, but also tailor make it to the company as well. So include aspects of companies specifically that, for example, Amazon has something that is very specific to them. Include that in your resume, include it, highlight it as much, like make it as obvious as possible. So that is for this question. What kind of projects should be included in my portfolio to prepare for BI or BA interviews? I would say any visualization and SQL projects you worked on would be great. For SQL, I say that because you might not be able to share your SQL code, but I've had companies in the past want me to explain the most complex SQL question I have worked on. If you have those handy and if you worked on them, it's better to understand those and use them in these interviews. That's for SQL. For visualizations, I feel like I said, DubsTech also has a course which helps you, build a portfolio of visualizations. I think it's just an additional thing to supplement whatever you've written in your resume so that they know. For BA interviews, for BA jobs at least, you will have to do visualizations in one way or the other. Like, it's mostly inevitable that you will be doing it. If you can showcase that, how have you used like complex graphs to very simple graphs to showcase complex data, I think those kind of projects really help, because as a BA, you will have to simplify data through visualization. So if you've already done that, it's a very good thing to add on your portfolio. If you've done, like, again, tailor it to your job and your role in your company, right? Let's say if you're applying for a healthcare company, if you've already done something in your portfolio that is simplifying a healthcare problem, include it in, like add it in, because they already know right off the bat that, you've worked with this data before. Like, there's a lot of information you can get through that one visualization. You worked with healthcare data before, which is important because you have domain knowledge about healthcare. B, you know how to simplify healthcare data because maybe your domain knowledge is helping you simplify it specifically for a healthcare audience and not a tech audience. That is something that will become obvious with your portfolio rather than you having to explain it in your resume or you having to explain it in an interview, which will happen much, much later. So adding this in your portfolio can always help. And also stuff like if you've used like complex calculations, that is really important in I think in Tableau, at least I would highly recommend, if you use any complex calculations, explain it. Don't just publish your visualization, explain it somewhere, because not everybody knows how to do it. So if you've done it, it's always a bonus point that, hey, I've used these, let's say in Tableau, there's a fixed calculation. Not everybody even understands fixed calculations. So if you've used it, you might want to highlight it and showcase that, I already have knowledge about this. It'll always help to include these kind of things in your portfolio. And if a company uses a specific software, for example, like I know some people use Power BI, some people use Tableau, some people use QuickSight. Not everybody knows all three of these visualization tools. So if you know them, you already have an edge. And if you've not used them in the past, I think personal projects are a good way to actually utilize them, get some hands-on experience with them, include it in your resume so they know that, these are all of the different visualization tools you already know, and you don't have to spend time learning them on the job. You already know them. So these are kind of some things I would highlight in your portfolios if you do send them out. What is the difference between a data scientist and a business analyst? How do I know which one is the fit for me? This is a great question because I did data science as an internship and I am now working as a business analyst, and there's a very good reason why. Even though data science seems to be more of some like a lucrative job than a business analyst job sometimes. So data science, I think you work a lot more with models. You tend to work, I think it's much more Python and modeling heavy. And business analytics is much more SQL and Tableau heavy. That could change, definitely could change. Some business analysts could be working on Python. Like I know I will have some Python projects down the line as well. But for me as a business analyst, I think you tend to focus a lot on the bigger picture of a business problem. Versus a data scientist, you can literally work as like your problem statement could be anything. It could literally be, I worked on a time series model in my internship for a supply chain portion of Amazon. Was my business analyst problems tend to be around like subset of businesses and broader business questions. And I tend to focus a lot on, as a business analyst, at least on where the business is going, how is it growing, what kind of metrics we can track, what kind of tools we can give our stakeholders to help them grow their businesses. Versus data scientist tends to be more model oriented. I feel like the skill sets for a data scientist would be to know machine learning, your data structures for Python. Versus a business analyst, you would need more of like a business acumen, more of your SQL, like your efficiency in SQL, in Tableau and visualization. So your skill sets tend to be very different. As when it comes down to what is a fit for you, I can tell you at least why I wanted to do business analytics, even though I did a data science internship. I really liked that I could interact with stakeholders when I was doing in my business analyst job. I liked that I can focus on growing a business. I like the interactions with the kind of interactions focused on growing a company, growing a business. Those kinds of metrics are much more interesting to me than models, which I feel like work much more in isolation with the rest of the company. I just like those problems a lot better than the data science problems. That's why it was a better fit for me. In the future, maybe that can change. Like I might go and be interested in data science, but at least right now, I want to explore business analytics and I want to see I want to use that business acumen I picked up while I was a consultant and while I was a project manager. I think I really liked working with that kind of data. So that's why it was a fit for me. But if this sounds something that you guys are also interested in it, I think that's a good way to differentiate between, do you want to go modeling heavy? Do you want to be more technical? Or do you want something in the middle where it's both technical and business oriented as well? I think some of those key things would help you decide if it's a fit for you or not. Okay. Now I want to kind of open it up to you guys. Do you have any other questions outside of the ones that were listed here that I can help answer? I think we have about an hour. If not, I'll be glad that I could cover so many questions. I'm okay with that.
The chat has a few questions.
Oh, let's go through the chat. Okay, to answer Shruti's question, her question is, tell me the risk you've taken. How do we approach this type of a question? Again, honestly, tailor it to a leadership principle you think it's important. Like, at least for me, risk, how would I categorize which, like, understand which leadership principle you want to tackle with this question. You could go multiple different routes with a risk question. You could go, let's say you're tackling a important stakeholder, and if you were to ruin the relationship with them, that's a risk. So that would be a different leadership principle. Versus, hey, if you think your customer is wrong and you have to try to convince your customer that your solution is a better solution, that's a different leadership principle. So if it's a risk kind of a question, understand what leadership principle are you trying to go towards, tailor your answer towards that leadership principle. And if you've taken a risk, make sure you quantify your results in some way, because if you've taken a risk, if it paid off, that's a much better story. So make sure to highlight if it paid off, how did it pay off, who did it benefit, what kinds of people did it benefit, how did it help the company. So that's how I would actually at least tackle a risk question. I will share all the documents in your presentation, in the presentation after this. Okay. For a BA interview, apart from SQL, what other tech skills are needed? I would say visualization is a big part, and understanding what metrics are important to a specific business are really, really important. Because even right now, I work with at least 3-4 teams, and all these 3-4 teams don't have the same set of metrics that they track and that they think will allow them to understand the business better. So understanding the business specifically will help you understand what metrics you need and understand how you can structure a report or structure your data in a way that you're answering some of the questions they're going to have. So I think Excel is a good part. Like I think Excel is another tech skill you would really need. I personally would love if nobody used Excel in the past, in the future, and would just stick to Tableau. But that's not the world we live in, unfortunately. So if you can get these metrics, like understand what metrics are important to teams, understand how to convert them into quantifiable numbers that you can showcase in Excel reports and SQL format, data visualizations formats in Tableau, Power BI, QuickSight, or any of these, that would be really good technical skill sets to have. Outside of this, if you can honestly automate anything, I have seen that really be useful in any job. Like I know a lot of the people who excel on my team or on other teams tend to know how to automate like very basic things, like email automations or just sending out a report automatically. Like those things tend to come in very much in handy, and you will inevitably run into something where Python is just a better solution than Excel or SQL or Tableau or any of these things. I think that's something even I'm learning now, is I'm trying to get much better at Python to be able to either automate something or just do something a lot more easily, as opposed to doing it a little bit more manually in Excel. So I would say if you really wanted to pick up some other technical skills outside of SQL, Excel, I would say Python would be like very, very useful. And sometimes my job tends to be, automating certain data pipelines, which are also in Python. So I would say, I think understanding Python would be important. If you do go into Amazon, understanding the AWS would always be useful, because inevitably in some aspect of your job, I feel like it'll come up. So maybe understanding AWS is also like something that could help you stand out. So I would say these are some important ones. How should we negotiate the salary and benefits? What should we expect for the salary during the negotiation? Are we going to be an L4 or an L5? Honestly, so first part of the question, negotiating salary, I would say whatever method you're comfortable with, go for that route. I was just more comfortable doing it on the phone versus an email exchange. So I already, went prepared, like, okay, this is my offer. These are what I want. I didn't have one, like I said, I didn't have one option. I had like 5-6 options on, if this didn't work out, if they didn't agree to this is what I was going to ask. If this also didn't work out, this is my next, this is the next thing I want. So I had like, if they said yes, great. If they say no, I had backups to my backups to make sure that I'm getting, I feel like I'm getting what I deserve. And I did this over the phone. Like I made sure I'm just more comfortable doing it over the phone. But if you're more comfortable doing it over an email exchange, write out an email explaining why, you're asking what you're asking for. Make sure you have like certain data to back it up. Make sure you're explaining why you feel like you deserve this. That's the first part of this question. So for what you should expect during the salary negotiation, honestly, it depends on the company and the team. Some people right off the bat will not even want to negotiate, and they will make it extremely clear from the get-go that they don't want to negotiate, so they will just stop. For those who do, they'll be very open to negotiating. So let them know, how much percentage increase are you asking for? What are you asking for? They may push back, like you may or may not get what your first option was, and that's fine. You have backups. At least if you prepared backups, you have backups. So I kept pushing for my, second or third or fourth option that I had. But if I feel like I was getting too much of a resistance, like even they will stop after a point. They will not move beyond a certain like percentage. So I would say then that's a good stopping point to say, hey, okay, fine. Like I agree to these terms. I think that's a good way to do it. Don't keep pushing and pushing and pushing. You'll understand even their limit after a point. So I think that's a better way to go about it, is have options. But if you're sensing that they are, this is their limit, this is all they are able to extend to, I think that's a good stopping point for negotiations at least. And if you're going to be an L4 and L5, honestly depends on your job. Business analyst jobs, if you start as O1, tend to be L4s. Even business analyst 2 tends to be L4s. So it honestly depends on your job. If this is a question that you still are confused about, you can always ask your manager, you can ask your recruiter. I think they will better be able to answer if it's an L4 and L5. In terms of Tableau and Power BI, how will the interview process be? Is it enough if we showcase our visualization portfolio? So for Tableau and Power BI, I've not had like interviews where I have to build a visualization. I think portfolios should be enough, but I've definitely been asked to explain the like complex visualizations I have made, explain why I chose certain visualizations over the others, what kind of formulas I have used. And I think those are the kind of questions that come up for Tableau and Power BI, not so much that, hey, they'll give you a data set and actually you have to make a visualization out of it. So I think like it'll come up either in your technical interview as a verbal question, or I think portfolios also should be enough to supplement that. What tools do you usually use in your daily work? It tends to be like SQL, Tableau, Excel. It'll now become Python. So these are some of them. And also QuickSight, because Amazon's come up with QuickSight as their visualization tool. So it's also QuickSight now. How is Amazon BA roles different from BIE? So BA roles tend to be, so BIE roles, as far as I know, tend to be more focused on building pipelines, automating data pipelines, understanding, the backends of the data, versus at least our BA roles tend to be more focused on how do we take this data, simplify it so we're actually getting insights from it that are useful for our customers to help grow their businesses and help track their businesses. Versus a BIE tends to be more of like backend pipelines that you're building. Okay, how would you recommend tailoring the resume as per every job application? Because I've seen desired skills for business analyst role in different companies varies a lot sometimes. It does, but at the core of what business analytics is, there is going to be some overlap. There is going to be some intersection between them. So I would say there are going to be like some experiences. If you've done a business analyst role, for example, in the past, included, that would be something that you would want to include in every business analyst resume. If you do data analytics, I would say that would be, again, something that will be applicable in every business analyst role, irrespective of the company. But if you do think that there are some requirements that are varying a little bit, you don't have to, like I said, you are not going to meet every single requirement on a job posting sometimes, and that is fine. Try to get as much of it covered in your resume. If you're not able to, it's okay. But if you are, try to just tailor it a little bit. Like I don't even think you need to tailor an entire project for this. Like just because you can even tailor make let's say your outputs towards if a company values business acumen, they don't really care about your technical skill sets as much because they feel like you can pick that up on the job. Make sure that you're highlighting for the same experience your business acumen over your technical skill sets. Versus if you feel like a company is very focused on the technical aspects of it and they feel like you can pick up the business acumen instead, focus on the tech portion of it a lot more than the business part. But if you think, there are just some things that are not on your resume, it is completely okay. They won't sit and check off each and everything. So it's okay to not tailor it 100%, but try to get as much of it on your resume. So what is the difference between a BA and a BIE role? I think I should already cover that, but if I've not explained it properly, please let me know. I can try and explain it a little bit better after this. How should we expect the BA? How much should we expect the BA position on Amazon? Again, depends on what level you join. Like if you join as a BA1 or a BA2 or a BA3, to be fair, like a BA1, I think you can also check this up online, but I think the max cap would be 9 I think I would check this. Honestly, I'm not sure what you can expect, but I think even teams, it differs. So I would reframe from answering this question, but I would say if you can go look it up online, this information should technically be available, but it depends on the team. It should depend on the what role you're joining as a BA1, BA2. Just check that online. You should be able to get it. I don't want to speak for other teams, which is why I don't want to directly answer this question. Should we work on individual projects on data visualization for making our portfolio better outside of coursework? I think it's useful. I think it's definitely useful to work on individual projects. It helps you practice as well, not just portfolio. I think when you do have to actually do the job, you're going to be much quicker at it. I've seen like even though I have worked on Tableau in the past, I've seen myself struggle sometimes in speed or, you know, making sure I'm getting the best visualization possible. There are obviously multiple ways to showcase the data, and it takes certain skill sets to be able to do it in the most efficient way possible and the most easy ways possible that every stakeholder can understand, irrespective of their technical skill, like abilities. So I think practicing individual projects helps you, increase your speed, your familiarity with your tool that you're working with. So it's always useful. Have you encountered any risk questions? Like, have you ever taken a risk in your job? I think I did get this question in the past. I'm not exactly sure, but like I said, if you've seen it anywhere come up in an Amazon interview question online, prepare for it, tailor make your questions, tailor make your answers for a specific leadership principle that will be applicable to your risk question. And however you approach it is basically depends on what leadership principle you choose to answer this with. If you think it's going to be better as a customer obsession question, go for a customer obsession example. If you think it's going to be better as like a invent and simplify question where you've taken a risk and invented and simplified something, go for that. It really, there's no right answer to this. It just depends on how you structure it and how you communicate it to your interviewer. They're not looking for like the best example for every leadership principle. They just want to know your story and how you have applied it. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be the best risk answer ever. It has to just be what your answer is, and that's enough. So what tools do you usually use in business analyst roles? Like I said, would be SQL, Tableau, Excel, Python now. I think those would be a couple of these. And once you join the company, different companies have internal tools that they use as well. That could be their data pipelines or their IDEs are different for SQL. So I think it also depends on the company, but usually these tend to be the more common ones. Do you think creating a portfolio or website for your projects helps to get an interview? Definitely, I do think it helps. I think it shows great initiative. I think it shows that you worked on a lot of projects. I think it shows, like I said, it's good to showcase these things right off the bat. I think it always helps you stand out. So definitely, I don't see it hindering your chances at all. I think if you've done it, it's a great thing to add on to a resume. I've been applying to jobs in Canada since a month. Unfortunately, I'm not receiving any interviews. What type of mistakes can I be making? Honestly, it's hard to say. If you're not getting callbacks, it could be for a whole host of reasons. If you think it could also just be the job market, by the way. So I wouldn't, be discouraged. It could just be that the timing is bad, which is what happened to me when I was applying for my jobs out of masters. It was just a bad time to be applying to jobs. But it could be a lot of things, but let's assume it's not the market. I would look at your resume first, see that you're, making sure you're tailoring your resumes to the job and the position that you're applying for. If you haven't already been networking, I highly recommend, going forward and networking with your recruiter. Make sure you can even go the other way around, to be fair. Like go on LinkedIn, see people who are hiring for specific teams directly. Reach out to them directly, even like not even through a recruiter, just reach out to them directly, introduce yourself, get an audience with them, understand what they're doing, and go that route. If you feel like just applying is not helping, because obviously a lot of people are just applying, I think supplementing that with, talking to recruiters and talking to managers who are hiring, talking to, not just managers in a team, but like other people on a team who are hiring, usually you should be able to get this information off of LinkedIn. Just directly reach out to them. And I think that actually did help me get one of my interviews for Amazon. I just directly reached out to people who were I knew hiring. So I think that will just give you a little bit more of an edge, saying, because you're directly in touch with the people who are hiring instead of, having your resume sent out in a void. I think that might help. And yeah, like I said, look through your resume, make sure it's tailored, make sure it's quantifying your contributions and not just vague statements on there. I think these should give you a good shot, but also understand that, the job market sometimes is a little bit bad. There have been layoffs everywhere. So a lot of people are looking for jobs right now. So don't just discourage, just keep applying, keep networking. It's ultimately, I've been told, a numbers game. So just keep applying. Do you have, and also actually going back to that point, like I said, even apply to jobs, even if you feel like you're not meeting every single job requirement, apply to jobs, even if you feel like you might not be able to tackle, the interview questions. Like expand your circle a little bit to the jobs that you are a little bit hesitant to apply for because you feel like you don't, this is not the right fit for your past positions. If you're interested in it, I would say apply, but make sure that you're tailoring your resume to these kind of jobs as well. And maybe just open up your pool a little bit to other job opportunities and other kinds of jobs. Maybe that will also help. Do you have any recommendations for learning Tableau for beginners? Honestly, my best recommendation for Tableau is to just do it. Like, I think DubsTech has a course. They have a great course. Oh, YouTube videos are great, but YouTube videos are there. DubsTech has courses. If you're an MSIM has courses. Just get started and do like whatever you can with it. Take a problem statement and just do it. Doing is like the best way to learn it, and you'll realize that it's actually really fun. I have a lot of fun with Tableau, and all that I have learned in Tableau, I've learned on the job. This is actually one of my examples. Like every job I've gotten for Tableau, I never knew Tableau to begin with, and I learned it on the job. So it's use like YouTube videos, use courses, or there should be a lot of courses online as well to teach you Tableau, and just start doing it. You'll pick it up very, very quickly. And Amfish, thank you for the great presentation. Thank you for attending. After seeing your journey, it seems like you know your stuff. How did you handle your imposter syndrome currently? I am still, to be fair, tackling imposter syndrome because it comes and goes. Like there are projects where I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. There are projects which are complicated enough where I feel like I'm still learning. So it's almost, you kind of have to go into any of these problems knowing that it's okay to not know it and you can always learn it. Have a much more of a growth mindset. I think that'll help rather than saying if you don't know it, that's it. It doesn't end there. Like you can always learn it. You can always ask people for help. Don't be shy about asking people for help because you would be surprised. Even in Amazon, people are constantly asking other people for help. And they also know that not everybody knows everything. So go ahead, ask your manager for help, ask your experienced people in your team and your company for help. There's always going to be an expert, especially in one of these big companies. Ask them for help and they'll be more than happy to actually help you. And I think having that support system is really helpful to go back to. And having that community of people, who you can rely on in your company or outside of your company is really helpful. So just because you have it, like, don't let it overpower you in a way that you're completely like not applying to jobs that you feel like you don't deserve. Yeah, I think ask for help, you will get it. So that's how I tackle it right now, at least. What type of interview questions for VA are tailored to lean methodology or Six Sigma in your presentation? Business process management is something I'm familiar with, but not sure it could be tested in an interview. Honestly, off the bat, I'm not able to remember some for Six Sigma and lean method, so I can come back to you on this one, but at least for business process management, you would be surprised. Like they won't directly ask you about business process management, but you can always, sneak it into your interview examples. It's not about the role itself. It's about, what did you do in that role? How did you help your customer? How did you benefit ultimately what impact did you make? I feel like those are the things in a business process management you can actually bring out, not so much the actual like job. So I would say like try to tailor it in a way that it's applicable to a leadership principle. And I think that's how at least I think they would test it in an interview. It's also not something they would directly test, I think, but it's good to bring it up if you think it's important to mention that to your interviewer and to highlight that experience. But they're not just going to directly ask you like anything directly related to this. Could you clarify for me on resume tailoring? How do we stay loyal to the role if we have to change our resume for every role? It's not going, so you will tend to have like buckets of jobs that you're applying to. Like, let's say when I was applying for jobs, I had like business analyst, technical data analyst positions I was applying for, data science positions I was applying for, or let's say BIE. I had a resume for like four of these categories. Some of my experiences were the same. Let's say my internship for Amazon as a data scientist, I felt was applicable to all four of these resumes. I included it in all four. Versus if I felt like a consulting or a project manager experience was not important to, let's say, a data science, but could be important to like a business analytics role because it highlights my business acumen. That's what I mean by tailoring. Like you have your experiences like bulleted and make sure you can like bucket them into whatever role that you think is important, where you think it's going to be important. So that's what I mean by tailoring them. And it's going to be fair. You will see very specific. Okay. Yeah, so that's what I mean by tailoring. You will end up having a lot of overlap in your different kinds of resumes. That's fine. But you will have certain things that you would want to highlight in some resumes over others. So make sure to prioritize those and just keep those in your resume. Could you clarify? Oh, I think this is the same one. I haven't learned Python yet. Is this Python catered to data or do we practice regularly Python on LeetCode? You can practice Python on LeetCode. You can do it on HackerRank. You can do it on, I think, YouTube videos. There are a lot of YouTube videos which go Python like prep. So I would say do all of those. And then if you can start a personal project, that would, I think, be the best way to like get into the weeds and actually understand Python. So that is another way you can do it. How many rounds are there for each interview and how long was each of it? How many people do you have to talk to? How long afterwards interview did you hear back? For rounds, again, it depends on team and jobs. I think I had like 5 final round interviews and 3 interviews before that. How long it was, my final round interviews were, I think, an hour each. And before that was, I think, like 45 minutes each. And how many people do you talk to? I think it depends. To be fair, like different people have, like sometimes some interviewers have 1 person on the interview versus 2 or 3 of them. So I've had some interviews that only 1 person was taking it. I've had some interviews where 2 people were taking it. So it really depends. And how long afterwards did you hear back? Again, that also depends on the recruiter. It depends on how many people they're talking to. It depends on a lot of things. But your recruiter should be able to tell you like how much after should you expect an answer. Okay. How long usually should we expect a promotion? For example, from level 1 to level 2 with a salary raise. So I just started my business analyst position at Amazon like 6 months ago. I am still understanding the promotion cycles, but as far as I know, I think BA1 to BA2 maybe be a year, and after that I think would be subsequently 2 years, but I could be wrong about this. Okay, thank you everyone. I think these are all of the questions that I see on here.
Follow-up events are slides.
Sorry?
There are slides on the follow-up events.
Oh, you've added slides? Oh yes, sorry. If there's no other questions, DubsTech has a lot of exciting events coming up. There is the Power BI Retail and Analytics Workshop, which again, if you need a place to learn and show portfolio, like add projects to your portfolio, I think this is a great place to actually start adding projects to your portfolio and learn Power BI as well. So if you don't want to go through YouTube videos and want someone to actually guide you through this, join this workshop. I think it's a great starting point. Similarly, Tableau Geo Analytics Workshop. I have worked with maps in the past in Tableau, and I've seen it be very, very useful for a lot of companies. So if you want to explore that a little bit more, DubsTech is having a Tableau Geo Analytics Workshop coming up as well. You get to earn a certificate and show that certificate in your portfolio and your maybe part of your resume as well. There's a Power BI Health Analytics Workshop. You can see you'll get to create such cool dashboards. So if you want to learn Power BI, Tableau, and different like visualizations, how to do it, I think these are kind of very good starting points. So feel free to join any of this. And Joshua Cola is also conducting a Cracking the Product Design job search, I think on February 15th. So if you're interested in product, feel free to join that as well. And lastly, if I'm not wrong, yep, there is a datathon. So happening on February 18th. If you want to add some things to your portfolio, practice a lot of these, data analysis, to be able to use it as experiences in your interviews or even just general practice, make sure you join this. It's on February 18th and February 19th. And yeah, you should be able to have these links here. And follow DubsTech on Instagram. And join the Discord server as well. Okay, I think this is all that we have today. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to message, email back, I think on that email thread. Would that work?
Yeah, they can connect with you on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. Email the questions if you have any. I will try to answer as many after this, and feel free to connect with me afterwards if you just generally want to know more about what I do.
And if you enjoyed the session, you can give us a shout out on Instagram.
Okay, if you enjoyed the session, please give us a shout out on Instagram. And yeah, that is it. Thank you so much for joining. And I will stop sharing.